Hello, I'm Luke Williams from the XR Beat, a B2B publication focused on the business side of XR. Today, I'm speaking with Randy Warnaar, founder and CEO of FabStation, the leading AR solution for steel fabricators. They recently won Best Enterprise Solution at the Augie Awards, and today we're going to talk about how FabStation uses AR to compare physical assemblies with the original 3D model, catch errors earlier, support inspection, and reduce rework. So Randy, many thanks for joining me and congratulations on your recent Augie Award win. Can you start by giving us just the sort of short version of your personal background in steel fabrication and how that led to FabStation?
Yeah, so I started in the business when I was just a little kid. My dad started a steel fabrication company in BC, Canada, over 40 years ago. So, yeah, I've got to know the business inside and out, from cleaning beams all the way up into management and everything in between. So I've got a lot of insight and sort of understanding about the different departments. And yeah, I think that's kind of helped me understand where some of the pain is when it comes to the fabrication process.
Yeah, just go into that a little bit more, Randy. I think it's really interesting that you come not from a tech background, but from your industry vertical. So just go a little bit more into that. What details do you pick up on that you might not do if you hadn't worked your whole life in the steel industry?
Yeah, I guess some of the things that really interest me has always been around the technology that's sort of made the steel industry kind of move along. I think a lot of people, when they look at construction, they think of that it's been stagnant and that it hasn't progressed over these years, but it's not necessarily true. Especially in steel fabrication, where BIM, building information modeling, has been part of the DNA for probably close to 30 years. They're one of the first industries, out of necessity, to really embrace it and 3D and use 3D modeling as a primary means of design. But because of that, we get these great 3D models. But one of the things that was kind of missing is the people who actually build it have to build from 2D schematics still. So there's all this rich 3D model data that's kind of trapped in the office, and the office managers can see the site and kind of navigate the model. But the guys who really need it, who are actually building those 3D objects, they're stuck looking at a flat piece of paper and trying to infer, what the design intent is based on that. So I thought it would be really interesting to kind of bring that 3D model to the shop floor in a meaningful way, and AR was kind of that sort of bridge, that thing that could really make it come alive.
Really interesting, and it's obviously an expensive, or can be an expensive mistake when it happens in your particular industry. So let's talk about those mistakes. What are they? What are the most common ones that you come across, and which ones tend to be the most costly to businesses?
Well, that's the one of the main issues with these 2D drawings is there's a lot to be left to interpretation. And so some of the things that get represented are sort of ghost lines, where there's a part maybe on the far side of the piece that they're making, rather than on the immediate near side. So interpreting near side, far side can be an issue. Sometimes it's not obvious, how you should orientate the plate. Sometimes people put it on 180 degrees the wrong way. And then, of course, there's measurement errors that sort of creep in. People are pulling a tape measure to measure the distance where they should put these parts. And they might just misread, they say an inch, it's either an inch or a foot in Imperial that sort of gets misread. And then just missing the parts altogether, might be some little small part they forgot, that sort of thing. So there's lots of categories of errors, and they're all pretty obvious once you kind of look back and find them. But when you're kind of in the middle of building it, it's not so obvious.
So how do you guys compare the physical assembly on the shop floor with the original 3D model?
Yeah, so that's where it gets interesting. Through the either the iPad Pro or the HoloLens 2 and Magic Leap, we're able to take that 3D model and overlay it directly onto the workpiece that they've built or are building. Um, we kind of use a QR code just to kind of localize the model. And then from there, we have some controls which we can fine tune and maneuver so it perfectly matches. So it's more of a visual alignment by the operator. And then once they get that alignment, we have quite good and what I think is superior tracking to enable this. So we're able to get 1.5 millimeters accuracy over a 10-meter long object. And so that
Mm.
means you can kind of retain those inspection tolerances that you need. So you can identify all those things that I was sort of talking about before. So once you have that model overlaid, you're basically playing a game of spot the difference between
Mm.
the model and the actual workpiece. So it's a really great tool for both, experienced folks, but it's a great way to also get sort of the younger folks involved and get them trained up and how to understand drawings and how to, really visualize what they're going to build and make things more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. And presumably, Randy, conventional inspection still does matter and still does have a place. So, how should buyers who are thinking about FabStation alongside existing QA and inspection processes, how should they conceive of your product? Presumably, not as a total replacement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a lot of people are, ask us like, how do we calibrate it? We have a quality assurance program that mandates that that we check the calibration of instruments every year. But at the heart of it, it's just a means to identify targets for further inspection. So you're doing that visual inspection. You're seeing if the model matches perfectly with the object you've built, and if it does, you haven't detected anything that you should investigate further. So you can confidently say that it's been built correctly. However, if there are a few things that don't quite match the model, something that's shifted over or missing or the like, that's when you have to go back to your main tool for inspection, your trusty tape measure, and
Mm.
go back and actually measure and confirm anything that doesn't look quite right. So the tape measure is still the primary means for inspection. We're just helping speeding up the process of finding where these problem areas might be.
And when an error is found during fabrication rather than later in inspection on site, what kind of changes there? What's
Yeah,
the
so
benefit?
ideally there is you're trying to find these things after the process called fit up. So there's you get the raw material and you put all the parts on, and then you temporarily tack them in place. At this point, nothing's permanent, so that's a great time to actually do the inspection so that it can
Hmm.
be changed without having to incur a lot of rework. Um, However, if it does sort of get down the line and gets completely welded out and attached permanently and painted, and even hopefully never happens that it actually gets out the door and onto the site, the costs sort of escalate the further down the line it gets. So,
Mm.
if it gets past welding, then you have to gouge everything out and it becomes quite labor intensive and time intensive. However, if it gets to the site, that's where things really start to stack up. You've got a crane on site. It's $300-400 an hour. If you have one piece that doesn't fit, everything stops. You can't progress any further because the rest of the building requires that one little jigsaw piece, and if you can't put it up, you're kind of screwed in a way.
Mm.
So you have to fix it, and that costs a lot of money. So that's where we see, huge savings if you can just if you can eliminate those errors from going to site and catch them early on. That's where the ROI for AR in this type of inspection really pays off, really pays for itself.
And is that monetary saving your main sort of pitch to potential customers? I found out about things like inspection time, avoided rework, reducing site problems. Are they part of the pitch, or is it mainly this idea of saving money at the end of the day?
Yeah, there's quite a few benefits to using it on the shop floor. I think the easiest one to understand is the most visceral pain that they feel is that site one. Where things are getting held up, schedules are falling behind because there's a bunch of mistakes that are getting out to the field. And there's a lot of tension that comes as a result of that. However, if you can imagine, pulling out a piece of paper, looking at all these dimensions, and then pulling a tape measure to every single part is also very labor intensive. So there is a significant time savings when you're using the tool. Just to give you an instance, we always kind of have a benchmark, say 10-meter long column that has, say, 20 to 30 parts on it. It can take upwards of 30 to 40 minutes if you're doing a thorough inspection. However, with FabStation, when you're doing the setup and starting it up all the way to finishing your inspection, it takes anywhere from, say, 5 to 8 minutes. So there's significant savings. Plus, you have one of your best, most skilled tradesmen doing this. They need a lot of experience to be able to do this properly. You can get one of your more junior workers to do that initial inspection, find those sort of mismatches, and then on the sort of 5 or 10% that have question marks, they can be pulling over the experienced person to help them identify what the errors might be.
Is there much competition in this particular field, Randy? Is there
Yeah,
anyone
it's
that does
starting
it?
to heat up. It definitely is. We had a greenfield for some time, but now we have some. So there were some other, deep tech companies in the space that were more focused on aerospace and some other manufacturing. But now we have very specific structural steel competitors that have come to market. They've seen the benefits of it, and so now I would say it's a permanent category and a permanent piece of tech that's essential for every fabricator's tech stack.
Okay. And just fill me in on the process a little bit more. So the information that you capture on the shop floor, how does it feed back to, QC and production management? How does that actually happen?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important things that we've sort of figured out and realized when we started building the product. It was mainly that AR feature. But what we soon realized was once you've identified the error, you need a way of reporting it, and you need a way of having this get back to management so that they can actually make sure they do something about it, right? And also, a lot of them have different quality standards that they're working to and audits that they have to go through to make sure that they're, ticking all the boxes as part of their quality assurance program. So these are the tools that we found that were lacking and that we had to build. So that's something that we're proud to say we have the really great start of a manufacturing execution system that we launched back in November of last year. And what this does, it really helps prevent someone from looking through the goggles and seeing the error, maybe marking a little X on the beam or whatever, but prevent someone else from coming and taking that and putting it on a truck, because it happens all the time. You find the error and you go in the back and you try and find someone to fix it, but meantime someone else comes along and actually pulls it out of the shop and puts it on a truck and it disappears. So the error still gets out there. So we've got a really great system for actually marking that there's a deficiency and preventing any shipping from happening until it's rectified. So the AR is kind of the execution layer. It's the tool set that we've now provided to these steel workers to more efficiently get their work done. And production tracking, inspection reports, all that stuff now becomes a byproduct of actually using the tool. That's, I think, a really important, and that's, I think, really important role that AR has to play in a manufacturing setting is providing tool sets, actually enhancing and augmenting a person's work, giving
Mm,
the tools, like the modern calculator of the steel shop. It gives them the tools to actually get their work done. And now those things that management really wants, they want to see, production data. They want to see, where is this assembly in the production line? Is it going to make it on the truck on time? Like all these things that the staff needs in the office are now happening because it's just a consequence of using the tools, not some extra step where you have to take a barcode scanner and scan something and, oh shoot, I've got to go grab that thing. It's a secondary process, but now it's actually combined all in one, so it makes it a lot more convenient.
mm. And do you have to, as a business and as a leader yourself, Randy, do you have to kind of win over, hearts and minds within potential clients, or are they already sold on the solution? Does it differ? Does it differ by, by case?
Yeah, it's a real case by case, and it comes down to the culture in the shop. If you get a shop that's really embraces innovation, and they're really forward thinking, they have really great change management strategies, that sort of thing. They're more likely to be our champions.
Mm,
But the ones where sort of there's a disconnect between what management wants and what the folks on the floor are comfortable with, that's where we see the most challenges. So we make sure early on, when we're, talking to these folks right at the start, is we make sure that the folks that are going to be using the tools are in on the initial calls, just so they understand what it is, and how it's going to benefit them. And we make sure that they have buy-in, that they're part of the decision-making process. If they're going to make a decision to bring these tools into their shop, we want to make sure that the people who are ultimately going to use them want to use them. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to kind of win them over after the fact when they're not part of the decision-making process.
mm. Okay. And as a last question on FabStation specifically, let me ask you for a case study or at least an overview of an example of where you've changed the way fabrication or inspections happened for a customer and it's benefited them. Is there something you can share?
Yeah, I won't necessarily mention a name. We have a few, or quite a few successful customers. We have over 200 customers now, and a lot of them are seeing value. But one in particular, when I went in there for a demo, it's a huge shop. So there's about 3,000 people involved in this organization, and they put out a lot of tons of steel.
Mm,
When I went in there for the first time and did a demo with them, right away, we looked at stuff that was like literally ready to go on a truck. Um, you know, within 10, 15 minutes, they were antsy to kind of pull that out of the shop and put it on a truck. I looked at about two or three things, and right away we found errors, like
mm,
stuff that would have cost them a lot of money had they gone onto those trucks. So right away, they instantly saw the value. That same customer then created a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and sort of tracked all the similar types of errors that they found using the headset. And with just one headset, now they have about seven. But with just the one headset tracked over a year, they saved roughly $200,000 to $300,000
wow.
in rework and costs associated with the errors that they found. So that to me, when they told me that, I was like, well, I think we need to raise the subscription prices on you. No, no, right
Absolutely.
there, I understood that, and it made me feel really good that we were, providing this value to our customers,
Mm,
and that, you know, that was, I think that's why we do it. We really like to make sure that people find that value, and that they're being more successful because of it.
mm. Well, I can tell you're passionate about the business and about the industry, which is really nice to see. And I will be following the FabStation story with interest. That's all I had time for you today, Randy. It's been great today. Really interesting, actually.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Luke. Love what you guys are doing over there at XRB.